This is a quick tutorial on how to use Matrix LE 2x2 in Avid Media Composer. So first things first, how to find Matrix. And the way you do that is to go to Tools, go to your Effect palette, go to the dTective Suite category, and here's Matrix LE 2x2. So how you apply it and when to apply it. So there's a couple instances in which you'd apply Matrix. The first is what you're seeing here, which is a simple timeline with 4 tracks of video. All the tracks in the timeline are the same length. You can see that V1 through V4 are all the same length. And I can apply Matrix to this particular timeline and it will start to work immediately. So let's do that first. The way to apply it, you can either drag and drop from the Effect palette right down to V4, and you'll see it starts working immediately. Let me undo that. You can also apply it to any other track. You just have to make sure you're monitoring the track you're applying it to. And you'll need at least 2 tracks of video for this to work. So let's try applying it to V3. And you'll see I need to monitor V3 to see it. So here's my tracks, 3 tracks of video, 1, 2, and 3. Let's undo that, and I'll show you another way to apply it. Let's start monitoring V4, go into the segment mode, and highlight the track we want to apply the effect to, and then we can double click, and you'll see that Matrix is applied. So those are a few ways to apply the effect to a simple timeline. There are also more advanced ways to use it. If you have a timeline like this one, where all the tracks are uneven, you can see that V1 through V4, all these tracks are uneven. And that's a more advanced type of timeline, which we'll get into later in this tutorial. So just for now, know that you are able to apply Matrix to a timeline such as this. It just requires more advanced techniques, which we'll talk about later in this tutorial. So let's go back to our default simple timeline, and let's get into the settings. So the way to get into the settings is to go to Tools, Effect Editor, and the Effect Editor opens up. And you can see here we have columns, rows, how the effect is applied, margin, spacing, background, border, shadow, and the ability to save settings. So let's talk about it from top to bottom. First is columns. Right now we're on 2 columns. If I change this to 1 column, you'll see that it shows 1 column with 2 rows. So there you go, there's 1 column. We can also do 2 columns and 1 row. So there's 1 row. And you can even do just 1 column, 1 row. So it's just 1 track of video showing, which is just V4 currently. Let's change this back. You have margin and spacing. So margin, if you drag this over, you see that it just affects pretty much the size of all 4 of these tracks, or of these windows. And then spacing will be the spacing between each window. So if I drag this over, you'll see that those windows get a little bit smaller and add space between each one just by dragging this slider here. So that's pretty straightforward. There are options for how each track in each video is sampled in each window. It's a bit hard to see what's happening there, but just know that it's there if you want to play with it. Okay, then background. The default mode is grayscale, and what you can do here is change the shade. So you have full black up to full white, and then everything in between. So you can see there. The next setting in the background is color. So you can use these sliders here to change the color if you want. Or, if you want, you can color pick from within your windows here. So if I click in here and hold the left mouse button down, then drag, I can pick, say, the yellow from this truck. And then it applies that yellow as the background. Okay. The next mode is gradient linear. There are 2 gradient types. You have linear and radial. We'll start with linear. And you can see here there's a gradient that goes from top to bottom. And you have your start and end color. There's also size and angle. So size, if you drag this to the left, you can see it goes almost, well, it goes from basically a straight line all the way to a very large gradient. So you want something in the middle, I'd imagine. And then the angle, you can do, you can see it's turning. Let's actually make this into a more of a straight line so you can really see this. So you can see there that it's turning. And you can also highlight this slider and then type in like a 45 on your number pad. And you can see there's a 45-degree angle here. So let's change this size again, more towards the middle. And we'll talk about the start and end colors. So the start and end colors, that's the same sliders you had in the color option. So again, you can color pick from within your windows here, your videos here. So I could actually click and drag and choose maybe the black from this truck, and then maybe the yellow from this truck. Right. Or you can use the sliders again. So you can see there I've gone full black to this yellow color. And then again we can change the angle. Okay. So that's a linear gradient. There's also a radial gradient. The start and end colors are the same here. We can choose different colors. Let's choose maybe the orange from this truck as a start color. And then maybe the sky. And you can see here. Now the size is going to be the size of basically the circle. So if I choose size here, you can go larger or smaller. All right. So that's your radial gradient. So those are your background options. Now, if you wanted to rearrange these windows, you can do that as well. If you click and drag inside this window, say I want to move this one over to the right, if I do that, it's going to swap with whatever window I drag it on top of. So if I drag this over to the right, it's going to move this one to here, and this is going to go over to here. So there you go. So it swaps those. And you can swap any direction you want. You can swap up and down, diagonally, however you want to do it. So if I wanted this one to be up here in the top, it'll swap those windows. Okay. Back down to our settings, we have border and shadow. So let's go to the border. And right now the color is a white. We can change this to a black. We'll just color pick just like I did before, color pick in here. And then we'll change the width so you can really see it. Now we have a fairly wide black border to all of our windows here, our matrix windows. And the color sliders are here again, just like before, same exact sliders. And then if you want to do a shadow, you can do that as well. Right now we're at an offset of 5. If you drag this to the right, you'll start to see the shadow appear more obviously. And then the angle, that's fairly obvious what that does, the angle of the shadow. The opacity of the shadow, so you can have it be very, very dark or very, very light. And then the softness. Okay. Pretty straightforward there. Now the settings, you can save presets, you can load presets, and you can reset all the settings. So we'll try saving a preset. Click on that. And I can choose where to put the preset. Right now I'm going into my drives. I have a preset folder and I can just name it. And we'll call this yellow gradient. And we'll say save. If I want to load that preset, I can click here. And I can browse to it. I have other presets here as well. Like a blue gradient, I can choose that. I can say open. And it loads a blue gradient setting. Let's reset everything back to the default, and I can reload one of my presets again back to my yellow gradient. And we're back to that again. Okay, and then license is of course how you would unlock your matrix effect. So that's all the settings. So let's talk about a more advanced option, which is where you have uneven tracks of video in your timeline. So you can see here, I have one track of video on top that goes all the way across, and then down here, there are 3 tracks that are uneven. So we'll first talk about applying matrix to a timeline where the uppermost video track is the longest, but the ones below it are uneven. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll apply matrix to V4. And you can see what's happening. It's duplicating tracks. So we have to do something called applying filler into these blank areas. So how do we deal with that? Well, first we have to go into segment mode, which is here, and highlight the area we want to fill with an Avid title effect. So click in this area here, and then choose the Avid Titler Plus tool, which is right here. Click on that. And what's going to happen is Avid adds some filler material here, and then the Titler Plus effect is applied here. And here's my Titler Plus effect editor. And all we want to do here really is create a black background. So this toggle switch here is the background. And we want to choose a color for our background. So click on this. You can double click this. I'll choose black. Click OK. Right? And that applies a black background to the Avid Titler effect. So now what we need to do is save this Avid Titler Plus effect to our bin, and then we can apply it to the rest of these blank areas in this timeline. So let's close the Avid Titler Plus effect editor. And then if the main Avid effect editor is not open, say it's closed, go to Tools and then Effect Editor. Click on the Avid Titler Plus effect, and then drag this little icon into your bin. So click it, drag it, drop it in. And now all we have to do from this point on, make sure we're in segment mode, and then shift click any of these areas that are blank. Then double click this Avid Titler Plus effect, and you see that it applied the Avid Titler Plus effect to all these blank areas. Let's go out of segment mode, and if I drag across this timeline, you'll see it's just adding blank areas where there's no video. And that's what you want to see. So now matrix is working correctly. But suppose you had a timeline where all these tracks of video were uneven. That's where we'll get into using matrix on a filler track of video. So let's go ahead and do that. So here's a timeline where all the tracks of video are uneven across the board. So V4 through V1, these are all uneven. So we will have to create a whole new track of video here. And the way you do that is go to Timeline, the Timeline menu, choose New, and choose Video Track. And it will add a V5 track above V4. Okay. And now you can go into segment mode if you want. Click on this track of video and double click to apply matrix. And you see it applied the effect to a filler track. Let me undo that, because you can also go out of segment mode and just drag it right down to V5. You can see it added a filler track of video, and matrix is applied to that filler track. So let's make sure we're monitoring V5, and we'll get into how to get this to work. So first thing is go to your effect editor, Tools, Effect Editor, and tell matrix that you've applied the effect to a video filler track. That's step 1. Okay. So the next step is, just like before, we'll need to create some Titler Plus material. So go into segment mode, click on the track, the first track where you want to apply some filler material and apply your Titler Plus material. Click on that. Click on the Titler Plus tool. That will open up the Titler Plus tool. Avid adds the filler. It adds the Titler Plus to that particular segment. We will turn on the background. We'll select, double click, select a background color, choose black, and then we will save the effect to our bin. I already have one saved, but if you want to do it again, you can. Drag it, drop it in, and there's our effect saved to our bin. So now we just need to select the rest of these gaps. So go into segment mode, shift click all these gaps, and then double click your Avid Titler Plus effect in your bin. And now all these gaps are filled. Let's go out of segment mode, and you'll see that there you go. Matrix is working correctly now. So as I go down this timeline, you see that as it hits pieces of video on the timeline, it's showing them here, but anywhere where there's not video, it's just showing black. So there's filler, filler. Here's a track of video, here's a track of video. So it's showing those, but where there's no video, it's just showing the filler. So it's working correctly. And that's how Matrix LE 2x2 works in Avid Media Composer. Thanks for watching.